because Merrick Garland failed us. He wasn't the man for the moment. We needed an aggressive fighter, somebody who fought hard but fought fair. And he decided the optics of going hard after Republican criminals was too much for him to take.
Hey, folks, welcome to the Michael Steele podcast. I am very happy to welcome to the podcast, back to the podcast, my buddy Glenn Kirschner, former federal prosecutor, has been doing that job for 30 years, in which he's amassed an enormous amount of trial experience as a prosecutor. He served in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia for 24 of those 30 years. He is an MSNBC on-air legal analyst, also does that good work for NBC News, and is the host of the video podcast Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner, where he breaks down today's complex legal issues, and he does it so well in ways that are understandable. And he's going to do a little bit of that for us as we look at the unwinding of Trump's legal woes. So neatly packaged, weren't they? Just so neatly packaged. We'll get into that. Jack Smith's hanging up his cloak, his super cape, which was a little tattered and torn, thanks to Merrick Garland. Okay, we'll talk about that too with my buddy Glenn Kirschner coming up right here on the Michael Steele podcast right after this. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Michael Steele podcast. I'm sitting here having a little fun with my buddy, Glenn Kirschner. It's always a treat. I have mad respect for this brother. I have, over the last few years, watched him just break down some of the more complex legal aspects of Trump's crazy and the nature and changes in the court system. And so forth. And it's just always a pleasure to get him on the podcast to have a conversation, given your background in law enforcement and law and all of that. So welcome, Glenn. It's always a treat, man.
Michael, thank you for the kind introduction. And, given that we're living in the legal upside down, I wonder how much value I can add these days, because I talk about how the rule of law is supposed to work from the platform of somebody for 30 years as a federal prosecutor, enforcing the law and being loyal to the Constitution. I do not recognize today's America, but I'm going to keep running my mouth as long as they let me.
You're going to try to figure it out, right? Before we get into the good stuff that gets in front of us, I do want to sort of alert everybody as we are gathering here, breaking news out of the Middle East, where negotiators from Israel, and this is according to the New York Times, and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire in Gaza after more than 15 months of what we know to be a devastating war, having begun with the attacks on October 7th. The agreement still needs some formal pieces to be put in place and to be ratified by the Israeli cabinet, as well as other officials. But the Israeli prime minister said in his statement that a number of clauses in the agreement still remain unresolved, but was hoped that they would be worked out on Wednesday night. The reality of it is the first phase of this deal will include the starting of bringing hostages home, releasing the hostages. So, Glenn, as we are starting this conversation, and we're on the precipice of beginning a new administration, we have this breakthrough in the Middle East. I know it's not your bailiwick per se, but just your thoughts on how this administration, the Biden administration, is closing out in many respects as we get ready for a new administration. Trump and some of his ilk are already out there bragging about taking credit for this, beating their chest, saying, told you that there was going to be hell to pay if you didn't get this resolved before I became president. Folks, that's not how this worked. Donald Trump has done jack shit on this. In fact, his noise probably created more of a hindrance at various points. And I think we need to be very clear about that. Please don't be stupid and think that Donald Trump had anything to do with what's happening right now between Israel and Gaza. But the Biden administration has been on point, and it has been applying American principles and ideas and ideals to this process. I'd be curious just your initial thoughts, Glenn, and then we can get into some of the other crazy that's going on here at home.
Yeah, Michael, this is good news. I think we always hope for the best and prepare for the worst. But listen, Biden and Blinken have been working. I'm not on the inside of the federal government anymore. I retired after 30 years from the Department of Justice. But they've been working, I can say with some confidence, daily to make this happen. I hope I don't get this number wrong. I think I heard some reporting that Blinken has traveled over there 19 times to try to work on this problem day and night. I mean, you feel for the hostages, for the families, for the people of Palestine. You know, you feel for the victims on both sides, right? There are no winners in this. So a ceasefire and beginning to bring home the hostages is a remarkable, wonderful development if it holds, and let's hope it holds. And I hope everybody will tune out Donald Trump's posts and his unhinged rants about how this is all his doing. This is the Biden and Blinken team working night and day for months and months and months and months to bring this to fruition. And there's plenty of time for Donald Trump to come in after January 20th and begin to claim that whatever he does moving forward, you know, he can take some credit for. But please, people, don't be fooled.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that is just smart all the way around, just to keep ourselves focused on really what's happening and how things have come about. We saw on many occasions, not just on this, but on other situations in which the Biden administration was able to move the needle, where they've made a difference in the ultimate outcome, whether it's finally getting an infrastructure bill done, arresting the rise in inflation. And for me, the interesting part of this has always been how they've told the story, and how others, largely on MAGA world, come and eclipse storylines and take credit for shit they never did, and in fact were largely against, and yet and still these outcomes have been good outcomes for now American foreign policy, as well as American domestic policy. So I agree with you in terms of how that's come together. So we just wanted to level that up for folks to let everybody know that these things are happening as we're sharing this moment together with Glenn. And it's good to be able to put this in front of everybody. And so pay attention to what happens next as we get ready for a new administration to come into play. With that in mind, Glenn, we just witnessed the last, 10 days or so, various judicial jujitsu, say that 2 times fast, with efforts to block release of the reports from the special counsel, and how did you see those legal machinations playing out over the last few days and weeks as this part of Donald Trump's saga winds into his next term as president?
Yeah, Michael, amidst the gathering Trump-induced darkness that we are all experiencing, and we're about to experience a hell of a lot more of it beginning on January 20th, I'm always looking for the points of light, not to be Pollyanna, not to be unrealistic or high on hopium, but there are points of light out there, right? One of the points of light is that the Supreme Court had what I'm going to say were 2 crossovers. They had Justice Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts, who said, you know what? Donald Trump needs to be sentenced. Now, the way they went about saying it was at best disingenuous, because they said, look, Judge Merchan already said he ain't going to punish him. He's not going to fine him. He's not going to imprison him. No probation, not even 10 hours of community service. Make the guy pick up trash or work in a soup kitchen for 10 hours, which is not all that burdensome before January 20th. Nothing. No punishment, no accountability,
Do you think he should have done that?
Oh,
Do you think he should have done something like that?
Yeah, he absolutely should have imposed some kind of condition that could be satisfied in the coming days or weeks before he's inaugurated, because you know what? There has to be some accountability for somebody who commits 34 felony crimes in violation of New York state law to hide, to bury, to secrete deeply damaging information from the voters of New York about Trump's unsuitability to serve as president. There has to be some damn accountability, because, Michael, if there's not only does it not serve as a deterrent to tomorrow's aspiring political criminal, but it serves as encouragement. Donald Trump got away with committing all kinds of felonies to try to cheat in and steal an election. Dude, sign me up. And he got no punishment for it. Where do I sign up? I'm all in, right? It has the opposite effect of deterring crime. It actually encourages, if not rewards, crime. But listen, let me the point of light is we got 5 Supreme Court justices who said the rule of law is not dead. It's not dead. Donald Trump needs to be sentenced, and Donald Trump is forever, now and forever, a convicted felon, unless some appellate court swoops in and reverses the conviction, which I think unlikely. Now, what a proud moment in our nation's history. We are going to be ruled, governed, but kind of ruled by a convicted felon for the next 4 years. And, you know, we're a laughing stock. We're a laughing stock
absolutely
of Donald Trump and his Supreme Court. But the reason I see it, Michael, as a point of light is because after they said an adjudicated insurrectionist can serve as president, contrary to the express text of the 14th Amendment, Section 3, and after they said a president can commit all the damn crimes against the American people he wants with absolute immunity, as long as it's a core constitutional function or an official governmental act, an official presidential act. After decisions like that, I was not optimistic that they were going to say Donald Trump should be sentenced like any other convicted defendant who, you know, a jury of his peers convicted him in a New York minute, as quick as those guilty verdicts came back. So that's a point of light that I'm going to hold fast to.
I appreciate that. And you know, I do appreciate your point of light. I'm sorry. I though, and I get into this with Andrew Weissman quite a bit. I just have little faith left in the Supreme Court, primarily on the last thing you just said, that they gave this man unfettered power and told him he can use it. And I worry for this country because of that. To your other point, do you think there is a chilling effect from this ruling, from this disposition of this case by Judge Mershon to say, yes, you're a convicted felon, but you know what? You can just skip the hell on out of here on some technical, point. Do you think that has a chilling effect on other levels of the court system when they have defendants? I can't wait for that defendant to stand up. I want exactly what Donald Trump got.
Yeah.
That would be my ass. I'd be like, wait a minute, time out, Your Honor. He had 34 felonies. I have 2. Yeah. I want exactly what he got.
What a great point. You know, I was amused, nothing funny about it, but I was still amused when I saw Senator Langford on Meet the Press when Kristen Welker was talking with him about the illegal immigration problem. We all know it's a problem. We need to work on a common sense solution. And I think both parties have been doing that. And there was a common sense solution about ready to pass Congress until Donald Trump said, kill it, because that would be a winner for the Biden administration. Donald Trump doesn't care about the border or the safety of the American people. Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump. But here's what amused me. I heard Senator Langford say, listen, you have people coming here illegally. When people are here and they commit crimes, there has to be punishment. And I said, so are you going to round up all of the folks who are here illegally and give them unconditional discharges? I'm just wondering.
I'm just wondering.
Right?
How's that work?
Has to be punishment, Senator. Isn't that what you just said? Donald Trump, 34 felony convictions, which is a hell of a lot more than any illegal immigrant has probably collected up. So, no, I have no faith in the Supreme Court. None. I'm thrilled to see the crossover by Amy Coney Barrett. She's done it a couple of times now. And Chief Justice, I think he tries to manage things as best he can. He's just not terribly effective and not terribly loyal to the Constitution. But what I maintain, Michael, and I hope people will keep this in mind on January 20th, the person who administers the oath of office to Donald Trump will be engaged in an unconstitutional act, because an adjudicated insurrectionist disqualified under the very language of the 14th Amendment, Section 3, may not hold office unless the Constitution has a plan for that. Both houses of Congress vote by 2/3 to remove the disability. And it doesn't matter that the Supreme Court in dicta, it's not the law of the land, it's the dicta of the land. Anybody who doesn't know what dicta is, it's the judicial musings and ramblings and thought experiments and navel gazing by the Supreme Court. It ain't the law. It's not the ruling in the case. They said, well, we think Congress should pass some more legislation saying what the 14th Amendment, Section 3 says, which is absurd. Of course, it's not necessary. And that's what even Amy Coney Barrett said and the other three justices. So they threw Donald Trump this enormous benefit to make sure he wouldn't be disqualified the way the 14th Amendment disqualifies him. And let's never forget, when that case was argued at the Supreme Court, after the trial court in Colorado adjudicated Donald Trump, after a trial at which Donald Trump was represented, adjudicated him an insurrectionist. After the Colorado Supreme Court affirmed that ruling, yes, Donald Trump engaged in insurrection, it went up to the Supreme Court. Not a single Supreme Court justice refuted it or rejected it or said, no, he didn't engage in insurrection. Not a word. I would call that an adoptive admission. They admitted he's an insurrectionist, but they found a workaround for him. So we are in dark times, because what do you do when the Supreme Court abuses its judicial discretion? We've got no higher court of appeal. Now, we've got congressional oversight, we've got impeachment, we've got the Department of Justice, who can launch a criminal investigation of, for example, any Supreme Court justice who was taking money and things in kind contributions from billionaire donors, not reporting it on their mandatory federal financial disclosure forms, which I filled out every year, and they were the bane of my existence. But I'll be damned if I was going to get a decimal out of place and have somebody say I didn't disclose everything I had to disclose by law. Right. And I'm betting they didn't report it all as assets that they came into on their federal taxes. We have a Department of Justice that can actually hold criminal Supreme Court justices accountable if the evidence is there. Our government, and maybe we shift to the Pam Bondi hearing because we saw her. Yeah, I was going to say this made me laugh out loud. Our government does not hold the ruling class criminals accountable for their crimes. We've decided we don't have an appetite for it. We don't have an interest in it. And God forbid somebody accuses us of being political. We're just not going to do it. We're not going to hold the ruling class criminals accountable.
So that does dovetail nicely into what's also happening as Israel and Hamas have worked out their arrangement. The United States Senate and you know, I guess Trump are working out their arrangement on his nominees. In particular, you had Pete Hegseth a few days ago sitting in front of the committee, which was actually, it was embarrassingly laughable watching that unfold. And, you know, I still don't think Democrats know how to do politics, and it was very evident. And I know that's not a political environment, but it is in a very highly charged setting. where there was a lot to go after that guy on other than his affairs and trying to prove, you're a Christian, but this is what you did. And of course, Hegseth talking about, look, I'm never, going to sit here and judge another man's Christianity and in his walk with Christ. But I've always, since I was a young kid, had a problem with people who pull that card out and start playing that shit when they get in trouble. And publicly like that, the way he did. I'm my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I'm so grateful I'm like, anyway, that's why.
Michael, you know how many defendants I prosecuted who
right? I was going to ask you, right?
Never went to church, as best we could tell from investigating the case and talking with their friends and family member. But what do they have sitting on that counsel table right next to them as that jury is deciding whether the evidence proves guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? Oh, they got that Bible.
They got that Bible right there. So you had that display where every time the Democrats will level up the charges, the Republicans came out with letters of reference for Hegseth. He's going to get confirmed. We knew that 2 weeks ago when John Thune told Donald Trump, which was then secretly revealed, that he had the votes. So that's done. Now we're with Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of Florida. What's your thought as you listen to her testimony this morning roll out? When we came in, folks, my brother was over here chuckling about that. So I can't wait to hear what he has to say about what he heard.
Yeah. And first of all, the Hegseth thing, I was active duty Army for 6.5 years before I was honorably discharged, and I joined the Department of Justice for my entire career. And I mourn for the men and women in uniform who choose that calling and who are willing to put their life on the line to protect us all. They're going to be headed up by a guy like Pete Hegseth. That is, it does a disservice to our service members, period. But moving on to Bondi, I was watching the hearings, and it's just kind of like another version of Bill Barr, in my opinion. And here are some of the things she said that really concerned me. And this is going to sort of dovetail with my observation that we don't hold the ruling class criminals accountable. When Bill Barr lied under examination by then Senator Kamala Harris, and actually said, when Kamala Harris, what a good cross-examiner she is, asked him, did anybody at the White House suggest you should open an investigation on someone? He knew that the truthful answer, I assume, based on his ultimate answer, was of course. What did he do? He hemmed and he hawed and he paused and he grappled
trying to
with
figure
the
out
word
what's the meaning of the word is.
You grapple with the word suggested. And then he ultimately did not want to answer the question truthfully. So you know what his answer was? I don't know. Michael, take it from this old career prosecutor. I don't know is not a perjury-proof answer. I'm not saying we bring a slew of perjury charges or criminal cases, because frankly, I put people in the grand jury and on the witness stand in trials every day. And unfortunately, people lie a lot, and we don't have the bandwidth to prosecute them all for perjury. But when you lie to Congress, it's technically called a 1001 violation. It violates federal law 18 U.S.C. 1001, providing a false statement to Congress. Perjury, an answer like, I don't know, is not perjury proof. All you need to do is investigate whether he knew or not. And I'm betting you could find half a dozen people who said, yeah, Donald Trump told him to investigate somebody. Yeah. And there is the perjury charge, the 1001 charge. But we don't hold the ruling class criminals accountable. Therefore, we get the government that we get. Pam Bondi did some of that. Here is some of what she said. And you can't listen to this without chuckling. First of all, she wouldn't say Joe Biden won the election.
Yeah.
She's still an election denier. All she would say is Joe Biden is the president of the United. Yeah, but did he win the election legitimately? Answer that question, and she's going to be the next attorney general. She was then asked, well, you heard the tape of Donald Trump asking Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, just find me 11,780 votes and declare me the winner. I haven't heard that tape.
Oh, see, that's the bullshit meter goes off the charts.
It gets better, Michael. Well, You've heard Donald Trump say and post that the J6 defendants who were convicted are hostages and patriots. I'm not familiar with those statements. Come on now. Come on now. Well, you know, Kash Patel has an enemies list. Oh, I didn't. You didn't even crack open his book, Government Gangsters, where he had 60 people on his deep state list, which the Washington Post has correctly called an enemies list. I'm not familiar. Listen, you are perhaps, if any of this is true, I don't know if she's lying or not. If any of this is true, you're going to be the least informed attorney general in the history of the United States. And then forever, the Republicans are blathering on. Guys like Chuck Grassley. It's so embarrassing for our nation. He was blathering on about how DOJ has been weaponized against the Republicans and blah, blah, blah. And by the end of it, I'm like, man, maybe we need to stop calling it gaslighting and start calling it grass lighting, because that was absurd. It was absurd. Here is a question I would have asked Pam Bondi, because they were railing against how you don't go after your political opponents. You don't use the Department of Justice to go after your political opponents.
Right.
What if your political opponents are committing crimes? Do they get a pass because they have this magical label, political opponent? No, you go after them without fear or favor. You follow the facts, you apply the law, and you put their stinking ass in jail if they violated our nation's laws.
Not
it's like a mantra. You don't go after your political opponents. If they're out there doing crime, yes, you do. And you let the criticism come. That's what I did my whole career. I prosecuted people. Every time I made a prosecutorial decision, Michael, I made somebody really unhappy.
Yeah.
The defendant, the defendant's family, the defendant's criminal associates, maybe the community, or if I declined to bring a charge, and I told my prosecutors, we are never more vital in our role as prosecutors as when we are declining to bring a charge because the evidence is not there. Yeah. You know who I made unhappy? The victim's family, the community, right? So the fact that my decisions were going to make somebody unhappy was very freeing to me. I was unburdened by those collateral concerns. And I said, I'm going to follow the facts and the law, regardless of who did the crime.
He's got 30 years as a federal prosecutor, folks. You just heard just a little bit of it. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into some of the other nuances of the sort of the legal changes that have occurred in this country while Trump has stress tested the hell out of our judicial system. More with my buddy Glenn Kirschner right after this. Welcome to 2025. Now, with a new year comes an opportunity for a new start, as well as some additions to that wardrobe. This year, I'm resolving to refresh my look and stay on budget. Now, how am I going to do that? I can do it thanks to Quince. Quince's Mongolian cashmere sweater start at just $60. And folks, let me tell you, that is some sweet Mongolian cashmere, right? And there's no better workout motivation than some new activewear. Their performance tees and tech shorts are perfect for any movement. However you choose to refresh your look and yourself this year, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They're able to do that. Why? Well, because they partner directly with top factories, cutting out the cost of the middleman and passing those savings on directly to you. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And that's important. Luxury feel in every piece. I love it. I shop at quince.com, and you should too. Upgrade your closet this year without the upgraded price tag. So I need you to go to quince.com/steele for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's quince.com/steele, QUINCE.com/steele to get free shipping and 365 days of returns. That's QUINCE.com/steele to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/steele. So folks, have you ever browsed in incognito mode? You know, that little button you push and says, hey, You're going to go incognito? Well, it's probably not as incognito as you think. Google recently settled a $5 billion lawsuit after being accused of secretly tracking users in incognito mode. Google's defense, well, it's a good one. Incognito does not mean invisible. In fact, all your online activity is still 100% visible to tons of third parties, folks, unless you use ExpressVPN. And that's why I'm here for you today. Without ExpressVPN, these third parties can still see every website you visit, even incognito mode. That includes your internet service provider, your mobile network provider, and the admins of your Wi-Fi network. ExpressVPN reroutes 100% of your traffic through secure encrypted servers, so third parties can't see your browsing history. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making it extremely difficult for third parties to track your online activity. Folks, it's easy to use. Just fire up the app and click one button to get protected. Just one button. Plus, it works on all devices, phones, laptops, tablets, and a lot more. So you can stay private on the go. My producers use ExpressVPN to maintain their privacy when they're working on my show. And you should too. Protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/steele. That's expressvpn.com/steele. And you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/steele. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Glenn, so you've got all this experience. You've watched the evolution of our Supreme Court. You've watched the devolution of our judiciary with the likes of Eileen Cannon, with whom I have zero regard. What do you think? What's your? I don't want to put it in terms of your fear and all that, but your 30 years of experience looking at the system, but more importantly, working in it. What do you see evolving with a Justice Department run by Pamela Bondi, an FBI run by Kash Patel, a national security apparatus potentially run by a Tulsi Gabbard or others in that space if she doesn't get confirmed? Marco Rubio at state seems to be a reasonable choice, but, is Marco going to be sycophantic to Trump as he's been, or is he going to find himself a little bit more freed? I suspect more the former than the latter. What do you see the next couple of years looking like? And I start with what will happen on January 20th. While we're doing our festivities on the Capitol Hill, while they're doing all of that, down Pennsylvania Avenue, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, there will be over 250 executive orders put in place that will begin to transform the operations of our federal government, particularly in areas of border security, the use of our military to enforce border laws. What do you, as a prosecutor, glean from all of that? And do you think that there are people still inside the building that will say no?
There are 2.1 million civil servants, federal government employees, and they actually have a healthy dose of protections as civil servants. I know, I testified before Congress on Project 2025, and my mission in my testimony was talk about the dangers of a Department of Justice whose independence was snuffed out by Donald Trump trying to flood the department with flunkies and lapdogs and sycophants, because that's an extraordinary danger. Really, the rule of law, Michael, not just because I'm a rule of law guy, but the rule of law is really the only thing that has the potential to keep our republic up and running. And if Donald Trump can completely corrupt and weaponize the Department of Justice, then the only point of light I can find there is the federal trial judiciary, not only in Washington, D.C., where any of Donald Trump's vindictive prosecutions that he directs his Department of Justice to bring against Liz Cheney or Jack Smith or fill in the blank with anybody on the enemies list. The federal court judges in Washington, D.C., people that I not only practiced before, but that I served as a prosecutor with, some that I supervised, some that I tried cases with, murder and RICO cases. I just happened to have the good fortune to know the federal trial court judges extraordinarily well, many of them. They will be the bulwark against Donald Trump's vindictive, lawless, baseless prosecutions if he chooses to bring them, if he chooses to direct his Department of Justice to bring them. Because these are people who are loyal to the Constitution and the rule of law, and they will not let a corrupt Department of Justice cram vindictive prosecutions down the throats of Donald Trump's enemies. Of that, I am confident. Now, don't ask me what happens when it gets all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Well, yeah, but
take our points of light where we can.
Well, you know why what you just said is important. It really is a reminder of what the Project 2025 concerns were. Why many of us, yourself included, were warning people about what was being laid out in Project 2025. Why the evisceration of the federal bureaucracy was an important feature of Project 2025, because then you begin to emasculate the very efforts that you're talking about. People inside the building who would otherwise say, wait a minute, time out. We can't do that. This is not, there's no basis for bringing charges. There's no basis for an investigation. There's no basis for ruining this person's life through the judicial process. Those people stripped out of the system, suddenly that whole system now changes. And that, I think, is one of the bigger concerns. So I think in the main, you're right that those protections, those guardrails are there in the forms of people whose names you don't know, and who are, I mean, they give the full meaning to the word career in terms of their service to the country. In those particular places, but we should also be aware that they are the target.
Yeah, and when it comes to the trial court judges nationwide, remember when Donald Trump's cruddy lawyers attacked the 2020 election results, all of the judges, right, in 60 to 65 cases that were brought challenging the election's results, all of the judges, including the Trump-appointed judges, held strong and said, go away, Rudy and Sidney and the rest of you. Right. Some of these folks now being disbarred for that litigation. Not Powell, but Giuliani has been disbarred twice over, New York and DC. So they held strong, right? So now let me back into answering your original question. What happens when Donald Trump takes office on January 20th and issues 250 executive orders? Here's another point of light. It is the incompetence of the people Donald Trump is surrounding himself with. Incompetence, sometimes sort of lapsing into imbecility, right? What did Donald Trump do within 7 days of taking office the first time around? He issued the hateful Muslim ban. What happened? Went right to court, got shot down. So he took a step back and tried to redraft it, clean it up, make it palatable to the courts and the Constitution, struck down the second time, retooled it, struck down the third time. Dude finally got one that eked through the court system as not being unconstitutional, but by then it was so watered down, it didn't have as sort of damaging an impact as it could have had. You want to talk points of light? So when I talk about the incompetence of the people he surrounds himself with, every dang one of his executive orders, if there's a legitimate case to be brought against the lawfulness and the constitutionality of it, we have so many organizations around the country ready to bring those suits. Plus, we have governors and state attorneys general ready to protect their citizens against Donald Trump's abuse and overreach and illegality in those executive orders. The courts will be flooded, as well they should, as long as they are legitimate suits brought challenging those executive orders, Donald Trump is going to be outmatched on the lawyering front every minute of every day in every courtroom. And I take that as a point of light. You want to fight? Bring it on. We're here.
So talk to me about two super lawyers, and one more super than the other. The first being Merrick Garland. I can't even begin. I mean, you look up the word feckless, and his is the only picture on the page. I can't even begin, because all of this could have been avoided. Yeah, we could talk about if Mitch McConnell had actually acted on what he said on January 7th and January 11th and all of that. Yeah, Donald Trump would have been permanently barred. But that didn't happen. There was another rail. There was another safeguard right in place. And Merrick Garland just never moved the needle on any of it. And even now, pussyfooting around with the release of the Jack Smith report, I get it. Why is he making the case that, well, there's the potential that this could bring harm to some of the other individuals if it's brought? This shit ain't coming back. Donald Trump, one of the executive orders will be the elimination of any federal charges against him. His Justice Department will shut all of that down. This report goes away on January 20th at 12:05 p.m. It's done.
And Judge Cannon, Michael, has now put a briefing and oral argument schedule in place. And frankly, let's remember, she has no jurisdiction to do any of it, because the case is on appeal, just like Judge Tanya Chutkan didn't have jurisdiction to do anything in the election interference case in D.C. once the case was appealed. She's holding hearings. She's issuing orders. She has no jurisdiction. And here is my beef with the Department of Justice. I'm writing about this right now for MSNBC. DOJ is playing along like she's got jurisdiction.
Right.
Stop it. Stop playing that game. Don't feed that monster. Don't pretend that this lawlessness down in Florida is okay. It's not okay, right? But the briefing schedule and the oral argument schedule she put in place when it comes to the release of Volume 2, the classified documents case, not to us, not to the public, the release to the leadership of the House and Senate Judiciary Committees, which needs this information. She's got a hearing set for January 17th. You think she's going to burn the midnight oil to get her ruling out before he's sworn in on the 20th? Right. Come on now. I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night.
Why didn't he just release it? Why didn't he just release it? He has control over the document.
I'm going to take up for the decision not to release it now, because Merrick Garland failed us. He wasn't the man for the moment. We needed an aggressive fighter, somebody who fought hard but fought fair. And he decided the optics of going hard after Republican criminals was too much for him to take. I'm projecting. I don't know exactly what his thought process was.
That sounds about right.
But, you know, in the 24 years he was a judge, he was a homicide prosecutor and public integrity prosecutor before that in my former office, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. But then he was a federal judge for 20 years, and it looks like he lost all of his prosecutorial instincts and chops and was too much bureaucrat and not enough prosecutor to be a successful attorney general in the most fraught period, one of the most fraught periods in our nation's history. And he failed. He failed us. There's no two ways about it. However, when he said, look, we've got two defendants who at this moment, Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira, Donald Trump's co-conspirators in hiding classified documents, who are still in a litigation posture because their case is up on appeal. And DOJ is asking the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals to reverse Judge Cannon, and I suspect they will, her dismissal of the case, send it back to the trial court and put it on the trial track. If that happens, we shouldn't be releasing a public report with all of the evidence about their crimes, because that could actually deprive them of a fair trial. So we're in this box right now. It should be decided before the 20th, because like you say, come the 20th at 12:01 p.m., this stuff's going to be buried. It's going to be buried, right? So at least if we can get it into the hands of the congressional leadership in the House and the Senate, the judiciary committees, it will be preserved. And I have a feeling Jack Smith is taking the necessary steps to try to preserve it against destruction anyway. So, there's stuff going on. I have a feeling we don't know about.
That leads me to the second super lawyer here, and that is Jack Smith, whom I knew nothing about prior to his being positioned as special counsel. But I just love the man's cojones. This boy, he rolls hard and he knows how to roll. But even he is not strong enough against what I call judicial incompetence. And that's Eileen Cannon, that's Merrick Garland, is in my view. What do you think about Jack Smith? He at least will be able to, I guess they released the other day, which one was the
Volume 1, the election interference case.
Election interference, right? Volume 1. I was getting my volumes mixed up for a moment. Volume 1, the election interference. What do you think of him? His resignation from DOJ, obviously appropriate given what was about to happen anyway. What's your assessment of Jack?
I think he is one hell of a career public servant. I get so angry with corporate media when they are forever putting Donald Trump's posts and outrageous statements up against deranged Jack Smith, and lately calls him a lame brain. But what we don't focus on, particularly in corporate media, is Jack Smith's background, his accomplishments, his career in public service. You realize he was a local prosecutor in Manhattan at the Manhattan DA's attorney's office. Then he was a federal prosecutor at the Eastern District of New York, United States Attorney's Office, joining the Department of Justice. Then he was a federal prosecutor out in Missouri. I hope I don't have the state wrong. Then he was the acting United States Attorney in Missouri. Then he back to the Department of Justice, and he was head of the Public Integrity Section at Main Justice, responsible for all high-profile public integrity investigations and prosecutions. And, he could have lined his pockets and gone to private practice, but he made his way out to The Hague and was the chief prosecutor on the Kosovo crimes commission, or whatever the technical name of it was, until he was called back to public service to our nation to be special counsel. Please, I would urge everybody, because we are forever hearing Donald Trump's, juvenile names that he calls Jack Smith, given Trump's limited vocabulary. I'm not surprised that he does that, but those are the things that stick in the minds of the American public as assisted by corporate media, in my opinion. Nobody has read, I did a Justice Matters video, I think yesterday, on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. And what I did, Michael, is I took 5 paragraphs from Jack Smith's letter that was the cover letter when he transmitted the report to Merrick Garland. 5 paragraphs where Jack Smith laid out what he did, why he did it, what his background is, what his team consisted of. And please read that. It's just like a 4-page letter. Read it, because that's truthful, accurate, candid, credible information, rather than Donald Trump's post with all his, juvenile name calling. But unfortunately, we don't focus on the accurate. We focus on the outrageous, because it keeps eyeballs on the TV screen and the laptops and the phones, and it sells soap powder. And I wish I was a journalism major undergrad. I learned at the knee of Clark Mollenhoff, special counsels to Richard Nixon, until Richard Nixon went rogue. And then he turned on Richard Nixon and went after him. Right. That's where I learned anything I know about journalism as a journalism major undergrad, right? We don't do journalism right. You don't give equal time to the truth and do a whole bunch of known lies. You don't do it because you're doing a disservice to the viewers and the listeners. So, there's a lot to dislike about the way we have legitimized and normalized Donald Trump, who tried to overthrow an American election, and we let him waltz right back into the White House again. And
here we are. Glenn Kirschner, one of the best, folks. He keeps it real. He has, he's that dog with the bone. You don't want to get sideways on the Constitution and the law with him, because you will lose a leg. He's going to chew it off and make you pay for being on the wrong side. Glenn, I appreciate you, brother. I really do. Very insightful, particularly your views around Merritt and Jack. I mean, because I think it's important to people to sort of see that framing and understand it. While, yes, we can be frustrated with the way Merrick Garland executed on his mission, we still can't, get sideways and up in the judicial processes that protect the rights of citizens under the Constitution, even if they're in a criminal posture, as two individuals currently are in some of the Trump trial stuff. But so I appreciate that sort of calming lesson there. And you're like, I'm going to tell you why. No, he shouldn't release just willy-nilly go out and throw the report out on the street, because there are people who are still subject to the protections of the Constitution, which unfortunately the man who's about to occupy the White House does not appreciate nor understand.
No. So we're in for some dark times ahead. We've been through lots of times in this nation, and I would urge everybody to look for the points of light, feed the points of light, support the points of light, because they are out there. They are out there in organizations that are ready to go to court and do battle with Donald Trump, given the coming illegality that we know is on the way. There are governors, there are attorneys general, there's independent media, there's your podcast. These are the things we need to feed and focus on and support and help grow, because we need that light to overtake the darkness, or at least stave it off for the next couple of years, because the midterms are going to be spectacular.
Absolutely. I get to have fun with this brother on MSNBC, where he operates as a legal analyst and gives us some really important insights from that standpoint. But folks, you can also check out Glenn on his podcast, his video podcast, where he hosts Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner. Check it out. Subscribe, be a part of understanding exactly what's about to happen when it happens. And Glenn, I appreciate you taking time, man, to come on and spend a little bit with us here at the Michael Steele Podcast.
Great being with you, Michael.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that does our time together. As always, I appreciate you. I keep a little something extra special in the cup for you. And so I need you to do the same out there. Don't forget to check us out on all those wonderful platforms where we get to play. We love it when you do that download thing. It means a lot. Certainly review us on Apple Podcasts. We always appreciate that. Follow me on X at Michael Steele, the podcast on X. As well, we're there. Just follow us.
Blue Sky, Michael. Are you on Blue Sky?
I am on Blue Sky.
Yeah, that's a great platform.
Yeah, it really is. Our Blue Sky is at Steele Podcast. You can check us out there, and I'm at Michael Steele on Blue Sky. So love that. Love you guys playing with us here on the Bulwark platform. Really appreciate it very much. Until next time, you guys be safe, be well, and happy Inauguration Day.